The other day, Bleacher Report put out this article that is ranking the top WWE and AEW matches of the year so far. And honestly, it came at the perfect time. I've had a hard time. I've been trying to think of different video ideas and things I could be recording for this channel that aren't just, long podcast episodes and short clips and things. So I've been trying to think of more things, and I tend to avoid stuff like this because it never usually is AEW and WWE. Usually it's one or the other, and I try to avoid that for lack of a better word, I hate the phrase because it's all that gets used now, but I try to avoid that tribal type view where you have to hate one because you love the other, because honestly I watch basically everything from both of these companies, and it takes up a lot of time, and there's tons of programming all week from both of them, and then all the social media clips and extra things and stuff like that. So I don't really quite have as much time to watch like TNA or New Japan or Stardom or any of those other companies that are really finding a footing now and becoming bigger and bigger. So this is kind of cool. It's cool to have both WWE and AEW represented here. I think it's kind of interesting, these types of conversations, just because everyone kind of tends to have a different taste in what they like. Like, everyone has different styles that they prefer. That's why we have so many companies, I think, that are flourishing right now in wrestling. But I thought it'd be interesting at least to go through and kind of see what was here, see what it looks like, see what the split is like. Like I said, I try to follow things like headline watching for some of those other wrestling companies. So like if people refer or see, social media really praising a New Japan or, something in Ring of Honor or TNA, I'll try to go back and watch that just to make sure I'm seeing everything that is really like a part of the wrestling conversation at large, if that makes sense. So if there's anything like that you think deserves to be right up here on this type of list with these, more established, bigger name companies, please, by all means, shout them out. So right off the bat, first thing we see, we got Will Ospreay here in the cover. He's going to be represented here for sure. He's had an incredible year since jumping over to AEW. He has hit the ground running. Like I've said numerous times, one of my favorites, if not my favorite in AEW right now, alongside Swerve Strickland. And I'm sure, I'm recording this on Thursday, Forbidden Door is this coming Sunday. They're probably going to tear the house down together too. I can only imagine the crazy stuff that they're going to probably try to pull off. So let's see what we got. Let's see. I'm curious too if the split is going to be like half and half, or if it's if it's 10 for each or 5 for each, or what their rules are going to be for it, or if it's just going to be picking the best from both and just you get what you get. So I'm curious if there's any hard set rules. So let's see. Strong wrestling fans, we have regular access to outstanding matchups from companies. Okay, so shouting out New Japan, Stardom, AAA. Okay, so just the top 10, I guess. So let's see what we got. So, okay, so they're doing 10-9. So they're doing one from each, it looks like, for each number. So that's kind of cool. So for number 10, we got Sami Zayn and Gunther, WrestleMania 40, Night 1. I got no problems with that. I think that was a really good match. I think Sami Zayn was a good choice to dethrone Gunther and end that reign. I know it's a little controversial. I think everyone kind of wanted to see Chad Gable get that spot just because he's someone that hasn't had that type of spotlight before, whereas Sami Zayn just main evented WrestleMania last year and was a part of probably the hottest storyline in wrestling. So it's a little bit of a bummer. I understand it because he's more established and it makes more sense, but it really feels like it could have really cemented and legitimized Chad Gable in a way that he just has not been able to fully realize since not getting this spot. I'm curious too if this means that that's the only time that these guys will be on this list, because I would almost rather have Gunther and Randy Orton from King of the Ring, or King and Queen of the Ring, I'm sorry, and then Sami Zayn and Chad Gable for any of their matches, because I think they've had consistently some of the best matches over the IC title, whether on Raw, pay-per-view, any of that. Number 9, we have Darby Allin and Konosuke Takeshita from AEW Dynamite on January 3rd. Okay, I probably should have said this before, but if I was younger, if I was like 18, maybe even 20, 21, I would probably have like a encyclopedic knowledge of what has happened this year so far and all of the biggest matches and everything like that. I would probably be able to pull them off and be like, oh, they're missing this, they're missing this. Like nothing. But January 3rd to me right now, today, June 27th, might as well be 10 years ago. So I would definitely have to go back and watch this again because I do not remember close to anything about this. To be 100% honest, I did not remember that these guys wrestled on Dynamite. So maybe it's a good thing that this kind of list is getting made because I no chance I'm remembering that. Then we got Ilya Dragunov versus Ricochet on Raw at 8 from May 6th. Okay, I do remember this. It was a King of the Ring, and it was a really good showcase for Dragunov, who has that brutal, hard-hitting style. Oh, see, they even said it. Brutal, hard-hitting style, and it paired really well with Ricochet, who just, for whatever reason, the way he's able to move and the way he kind of, like, can defy physics with his aerial moves and his set, it's a perfect compliment to someone like Dragunov because he's got the control of his body to make things just look absolutely brutal. And so when you get those devastating moves from Dragunov, Ricochet's able to sell it in a way that a lot of, more grounded wrestlers probably can't. Like, it looks brutal either way because Dragunov knows what he's doing, and I would argue he's probably, one of, if not the best wrestler on the WWE roster right now. But I really did like this matchup a lot. I think this is one that is definitely worth watching if you have not. And then we got 7, Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland from Dynamite, February 7th. Interesting. Same thing applies. I don't really remember this a whole lot. I vaguely remember it, but also, obviously when you think of Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland, it's the death match comes to mind that they had, the Texas death match, and they even say it here from Full Gear. The Texas death match is the match for those two guys. But from what I remember from this one, and I'll have to go back and watch it again, these two guys just get it. They just understand each other and how they work and the way that they can put on the best match possible. Because I feel like every match that they had in this rivalry so far has benefited from feeling completely different. So, like, obviously with, like, a death match and all of the violent spots and things and that, it's going to feel different. But even just the standard matches have different types of beats to them. And this really solidified that Hangman heel turn that was coming. And unfortunately got cut short for now while he's been out the last month or two. But this was a really good match in showing the switching of characters, basically. Like, this was a great character match for, okay, now the crowd is starting to get behind Swerve. They're not liking Hangman, which is crazy because he's like one of the heart and souls of AEW, and has kind of just naturally evolved into that role. So it's crazy to see him, be able to become such an effective heel. But this feels like a really strong character choice that maybe you watch this and it ends up making you want to go back and watch the others. Number 6, we have Mercedes Moné versus Willow Nightingale at the AEW Double or Nothing from, I want to say, May. Was Mercedes' in-ring debut with AEW. I guess controversial, long-awaited debut, I'll say. And it was, there's a lot of questions because I think Willow Nightingale is one of the most organically over baby faces in wrestling, possibly in all of AEW at least. I think there's no one who's a more natural, organic, and over baby face than Willow Nightingale. But there were a lot of questions about this because Mercedes had not wrestled in over a year since suffering a severe ankle injury against Willow Nightingale, of all people. Of course, that played into the story. But Mercedes Moné did not miss a beat, and Willow Nightingale looked more than capable of holding her own against a gigantic star like that in a high-pressure situation, which I don't think anyone had doubts that she would, but to have it like that and to see them put on a show-stealing type match like that really kind of showed how strong the AEW women's division has gotten. So we got AJ Styles versus Cody Rhodes in Backlash France, the WrestleMania 40 follow-up. So this is interesting because I think this is probably one of like one of the most so far that has been impacted by the crowd. That France crowd was absolutely out of control. And that was the whole show. It was the whole show. It was the pre-show. It was the post-show. It was the press conference kickoff before. Like, the fans overseas have just been doing it so much better than American fans have, and they're just so much more consistently vibrant for these live shows, specifically for WWE. And this match, I think, really benefited from that. The crowd was behind both guys. Cody Rhodes is just a massive hero, basically. Anywhere he goes, the crowd just wants to sing his song and cheer him on. And AJ Styles, maybe he's playing the heel, but he's so respected and loved at this point in his career that he's going to get that same respect no matter what terrible things they have him doing, in the storylines or in the match itself. So this was a great match because AJ Styles really put on a great performance, and Cody continues to rise to the moment when it kind of starts to seem like maybe the conversation is a little more about like, oh, he's just a theme song. Oh, he's just this. This benefited from a build where Styles pointed out a lot of bad things, and not necessarily like wrong things. And, it also being Cody's first big title defense was an interesting decision because there was some real like, okay, they're not going to do this whole story with Cody to make him lose, but also like AJ Styles could win. And I know that sounds like a dumb, weird thing to say, but like you look at it from either way and you're like, okay, I kind of see, AJ Styles is a legitimate enough threat, and he's been booked well enough that, he could. So you couple all that with all that good storytelling and all that building with just an absolutely out of control crowd. And I can see why it's I don't know if this is like actually like top 5 for WWE this year so far. I would probably put this closer to like 8 or 9. I think there's other matches that could be better than this, but I understand why it's here. Number 4, we have Darby Allin and Sting versus the Young Bucks at AEW Revolution. It's interesting. It's interesting because this was like just an absolutely insane match from start to finish. This was Sting's final match. There were so many questions about how it would end. Sting, who was supposedly really fighting to lose and to continue the wrestling tradition of going out on a loss to put over the opponents. Would he be talked into winning and preserving his undefeated streak in AEW and holding the title? The Young Bucks were coming into this new role as like the sniveling heel producers, EVPs playing up that, the Matthew Nicholas role that they're in now. And there was a lot going on, and this match ended up being like a complete car crash. You had the huge spot with Darby Allin jumping off of the ladder through the pane of glass. You had Sting's sons getting involved in the intro. You had everything you could possibly want. And it was in the Greensboro Coliseum, where he really made a name for himself at the start of his career and throughout his career. So it ended up being the perfect send-off for Sting. And in all honesty, it's one of the things that I think AEW might not get enough credit for, is just how well they booked and handled Sting throughout his run with the company. And the send-off was the perfect exclamation point to that. This was the perfect type of retirement match. So maybe it's not like the in-ring quality of some of these other matches, but I understand why it's here, because it's just a super crowd-pleasing, satisfying wrestling match by a bunch of people who you can clearly tell it matters a lot to them to get it right. Oh wow, number 3, we have Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 40 Night 2, aka Cody finishes the story with the help of the Wrestling Avengers. Just all sorts of stuff. Again, if Sting and Darby Allin had all sorts of crazy things happening in their match, this one was no different. It had the end of Roman Reigns' dominant reign as WWE champion. I think it was I should remember now. This one was really schmozzy. This had all the interference you could possibly want from the Bloodline, from Jey Uso, Seth Rollins, The Rock, John Cena, The Undertaker. It had everybody. It was literally like looking at a wrestling scrapbook. And it being Roman and Cody, these generational superstars, it makes sense even more, and it hits a little bit more even when you think about their place in wrestling history, and their families' places in wrestling history. So to go this route to end the reign, it felt a little overbooked, but I kind of think it was always going to be overbooked. And again, another match that felt completely different than the match that they had the year before at WrestleMania 39 when Roman shocked the world and beat Cody. Felt completely different from there, and it really served like the perfect coronation for Cody. Like, this didn't feel like he was just being handed something. It didn't feel like a gimmick. It truly felt like an earned moment. Number 2 and number 1, no surprise. Like I said, Will Ospreay came into this year joining AEW full time, and has just been shot out of a cannon here, basically, with just tremendous matches every week almost. And so it looks like he has got 2 and 1. He's got versus Konosuke Takeshita at Revolution, his first full-time AEW match, and then versus Bryan Danielson at AEW Dynasty as the match of the year so far. And I think that's probably pretty safe to say. I think Ospreay's been involved in some unbelievable matches. I think he had a great match last week, even with Brian Cage on Collision. It's a little different than these two. It's a little bit of a different blending of styles, but I really enjoyed that match as well. So Ospreay versus Takeshita was very good. It was a hard-hitting match that got more time than I think anyone would have expected, and the two absolutely sold it like crazy. And I think Ospreay coming in as just an unbelievably over dynamic babyface kind of helped a lot too, because this was, in storyline, he's still with the Don Callis family. This is a fellow Don Callis family member, and these guys came out and basically stole the show like 2 matches into the card, and they really threw down a gauntlet of like, okay, well, now here you go, guys, go ahead and top this. It was hard hitting, which Takeshita's style really is. He's got that harder hitting style, which blended very well with Ospreay's athletic ability, especially at his new weight, with him putting on extra weight and maintaining that aerial ability. Then you've got Takeshita, who's also extremely agile and capable of high-flying moves. And it created everything that people that don't like AEW probably point to in terms of like, wow, this was a crazy sequence of events. This was crazy back-to-back-to-back spots. And that doesn't matter. It's incredibly impressive, and it was breathtaking at parts to watch. And everything I just said can also apply to Bryan Danielson versus Ospreay, but then you factor in the fact that Danielson is probably the best wrestler on the planet right now in terms of work, psychology, everything. His brain for wrestling is unlike anyone else's, I think, working right now. And to put him in the ring with someone as capable as Ospreay of doing basically anything you can think of, it's an open toolbox for just the coolest things you can come up with. And that's what this ended up being. The story of Ospreay retiring the Tiger Driver because it hurt Danielson and I could have done without that, because it feels like they've leaned into the Danielson could get easily hurt and have his career ended type of thing a lot since he's come back to AEW, which I understand, but also at the same time, like, I just legitimately worry that he's hurt every time they try to run an angle like that because of knowing what he went through. So it's almost too effective to that end. I'm surprised, though, that it would only be 4 WWE matches this year. Like I said, I'd have to go back and watch a ton to kind of remember what's happened. But I'm surprised to not see Rhea Ripley, Becky Lynch. I'm surprised to not see, like, Io Sky, Bayley at WrestleMania. Like I said before, Chad Gable versus Sami Zayn would have made sense right here, anywhere on this list. Gunther versus Randy Orton, except that probably gets dinged because the finish was a little underwhelming, but I'm surprised that's how it ended up shaking out. But that said, Ospreay has put on a couple incredible matches. I understand not leaving either of these out. And then, he's had the Brian Cage match. He had a great match with Kyle Fletcher. He's just been on a tear. He had a great match with Will Hobbs before Hobbs got hurt, unfortunately. It's been a great year for him to come in and hit the ground running in AEW to a wider audience. And it's been a great year overall for just in-ring performance and for wrestling as a whole. So if there's anything that you think should be on here from WWE or AEW or any of the other companies for that matter, please hit the comments and let me know what we should be watching. Appreciate anyone watching the video. Thank you, and we will see you soon.